This is Anatomy of a Hustler. I'm Jenise.
And I'm Cope.
And today we are joined by Manushi of Capital Tuk Tuk. She is the founder of this tour guide company that uses unique vehicles that are actually electric to show a different side of Sacramento. So welcome, Manushi.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I think you wanted to go ahead and start.
I sure do.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us what brought you here? Give us a little bit of history for anyone that doesn't know you yet.
Sure. Well, I'm from LA originally, and I never thought I would leave SoCal. And I came to UC Davis for my undergrad and just really fell in love with the area, and then, had some jobs here and there and decided I wanted to stay in Northern California, right? And then, I don't know, there were just different things that I was doing here and there, and I moved to Sacramento and really fell in love with Sacramento. So I was like, okay, what are some ways that I can highlight the love I have for Sacramento, but also bring parts of my roots, my culture to the city as well. So that's kind of how Tuk Tuk came to be.
Okay. And for those that don't know what a tuk tuk is, can you describe it?
Oh my goodness, yes. I'm like, oh, it's a vehicle of fun. If you haven't heard of tuk-tuks, they're pretty common in Asia and South America. They have 3 wheels, and usually they seat about 3 to 4 people, but the ones we have sit 6 people. And yeah, they're pretty convenient. They're super fun to ride in. It's open air, so it's kind of like open and you can feel the breeze in your hair. And it's really a different way to experience the city.
Nice.
The word I would use when riding in a tuk-tuk, and if anyone hasn't rode in one, they definitely should. That's how I met you. Someone was like, hey, come downstairs and come ride in this vehicle. Yeah. Are you busy right now? And I was like, I guess I'm not busy. Let's go. Yeah. And then I went on it with you, and I think it was and then the word I left with was like exhilarating.
Oh, I love that.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, cool. Like I don't even think we went very far, and you don't go very fast in them, but it still felt exhilarating. Yeah. Like 25 miles an hour, right?
It's 25 miles an hour is the max we go, but I've heard that it feels a lot faster because, like I said, again, it's an open vehicle. But that's the exact feeling I do want people to leave with when they get in this vehicle, because I think that kind of brings me back to like the feeling I first experienced when I rode in a tuk-tuk, right? Actually, my dad used to drive one in Sri Lanka. And I remember when he brought it home, and it was this like big like come up for our family, right? And he's like, let's go, we're gonna go on a ride around town, right? So, he packs all of us up, and it really felt like we were on this like chariot, We were going around town just like waving at people and kind of like royalty, We were just like saying hi and waving, and everyone's exactly. And I really do remember that feeling, like it's like a flashback. I can go back to that memory, and it's one of kind of like a happier memory. And that was like the exact emotion I wanted to capture and bring back to everyone that chooses to ride with us.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went to UC Davis. I don't think there's a degree for becoming a tuk-tuk driver. Like, how do you go from what were you studying in Davis, actually?
I studied psychology.
And then you were like, I'm going to start a business. Like, how did you transition from a psychology degree to starting a tuk-tuk business?
I wish it were that linear. Like, I'm sure any entrepreneur would tell you, like, the journey has a lot of paths, and it crisscrosses, and it's very convoluted. And I think that's been my experience as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's been plenty of challenges along the way. Give us a little bit of history as to where you're at right now. I mean, I'm sure the pandemic probably put a quick pause on a lot of things. So walk us through some of the experiences that you've had in getting this up and running.
Oh boy, how much time do we have? Yeah, I would say there's lots of challenges, and I think coming from like a more disadvantaged background, I didn't start with any capital, really, and people in my network, my family, it's not like I can just call up someone and say, hey, I need this much capital. And I didn't come from a business background. So I really had to learn everything as I went along. And I think what I told myself is, okay, I'm gonna imagine I'm like a 5-year-old starting a business because otherwise I could not really have figured all this out, or it's just really overwhelming. There's so many steps, I think the first step was just really deciding who I wanted to reach out to or who is in my network that might know.
And what year was this?
I want to say this was 2015.
Nice.
Yes, so it's been a long time. And in 2015 is when I had the thought, and I didn't really say it out loud until 2017.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Let it marinate for a while.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because in between, I'm working full-time jobs. I was in graduate school, which I don't recommend, by the way. Yes, that's one a piece of advice I would leave is don't, do grad school and be an entrepreneur at the same time. But, it works out. I think everyone has their own journey, and this has just been my unique journey. What else? What other obstacles did I run into? I mean, I think,
Well, even just the history. It doesn't have to be just like a series of like, this is when I got punched in the face, and this is the next time, and the next time. But yeah, to take 2 years of ideation, was that just your own personal things that you were trying to get over before finally like committing to say, I'm gonna do this thing? Or was it just like, what was it that you sat with the idea for so long?
I think, honestly, the first like hurdle, I think, was seeing myself as an entrepreneur, seeing myself as a founder, seeing myself as a CEO. Like, I'm like, who am I to think that I can do any of that, I think there's this blueprint, especially for immigrant children or children of immigrants. And as an immigrant myself, I think we're taught work. You work and work, and you work a 9 to 5, and you kind of stay in the box, right? And I think the message I was always taught is you work hard, and money is hard to get, and you kind of like, what's the word I want to use? Just you kind of stick to what you know because it's safe, right? There's no encouragement on our family's end to, think outside the box or take leaps, right? And hope that there's a safety net. And that comes with its own, challenges as well.
Sure.
And I want to bring back, what was the question again?
I honestly don't know. I was so wrapped up in what you said. Like that was beautiful.
How do your parents feel about you starting? Like, you completely went against what they had taught you. How do your parents feel about you starting a business? If you mind answering the question, you don't have to.
Like I said, it's always a challenge when you've come from a background where you stay within the box, and there's safety and security in that. So, telling a family or even friends that, okay, I'm going to do something that might not be in your eyes safe or secure, right? I think they will always respond from a place of love and hesitation because of that, right? Because it's coming from the best place, the best place in their heart is to protect me, right? And I had to acknowledge that, right? Whenever there's any kind of criticism or hesitation, I think it comes from the best place, right? I didn't want to assume that they're trying to put me down, that they're thinking my ideas are bad or anything like that. I think it was just, okay, they're going to stick with what they know, and they're going to want to protect me. So I think initially there was just a little bit of hesitation. Naturally, yeah, of course. And then eventually, when they see things happening, there's excitement.
So like your TV appearances, getting shout outs on social media from big influencers, things like that. Exactly.
And then, just when they see the process coming to fruition, I think that's when they start believing, which is great, except to get to that point, there's such a long process, right? So I think that's one of the challenges I would say as an entrepreneur is that you have to really root for yourself in the beginning, really be your number one cheerleader, and then learn to build community that will kind of fit that purpose, right? And then realize who's going to fit into which group, right? And I don't mean that in any kind of bad way. you know.
No, I think you hit it on the head, and it's not about like segmenting people based on how much you like them or how much of an echo chamber you're in, but you have to protect that part of you that's like, I'm going to push this forward, I'm going to do this, and even if it's well-meaning, like it's not helpful, and being bold enough to step out and do it is huge. I mean, I can speak to my own experience of, I was in business for myself and had been for a few years at that point. And mind you, I wasn't making great money, still working up that tax bracket, I would say. But I was getting job postings from my mom still. Like, she would still send them to me, like, very lovingly. It's out of love. And I'm like, I'm not going to get a fucking 9-to-5. I committed to doing this. And it takes a level of peace within yourself to say, I know they mean well, and you were probably much more level-headed about it than I was. But there is power in just protecting that peace and making that space for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like the protecting your peace is huge, because there's a lot of noise. There's so much noise, and even in the good stuff, there's noise. You know. I think there's a lot of praise that comes with accomplishing things. There's a lot of celebration, which I don't think you shouldn't celebrate, but I think you also shouldn't get caught up in that.
Absolutely.
You
That's
know?
great advice.
Yeah. Ugh. And I learned that the hard way. You know, I think I experienced parts of that where I'm like, okay, like, I made it to something, right? I made something happen, and then the complacency kind of settles in, and then you get kicked in the butt because you're like, oh wait, no, now I still have to keep working. you know, like that was just a little blip, you know, and then now you got to double up on whatever you just did, right? How do you replicate that? Continue replicating. I think taking breaks is important, but also just all of it, seeing all of it as noise in a sense, you know, the good, the bad, the criticism. But yeah, just to bring it back, like I felt like, okay, there's like a lot of push and pull, right? So you really have to be centered in your own self and know like, okay, this is what I want to accomplish. This is my goal, and recognize other people have their own, I don't want to say intentions, but they have their own goals too, you know?
I was going to say agenda.
Agenda, yeah.
Sometimes like people can say that they're rooting for you, but then at the end of the day, you know, you have to put the line in the sand and delineate who really is, or discern who really is there rooting for you.
Yeah. And again, they can have the best interest, right, at heart, but it can all be good and still not fit what you were looking for, right? So being okay with saying no, and, you know,
Preach, yeah.
Right.
It's hard to do.
It is. I commend you. But so 2017, that was when you said, I'm going to try this, I'm going to do this, or what were the next steps from 2017 to where we are now?
Okay, so 2017, I got fired from a job. Okay.
Oh, the best moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny is in that job is where I met my current co-founder as well, Angel. And I remember he was actually he trained me in that job. And I remember thinking, oh, this guy is so level-headed and logical and organized, kind of the, you know, opposite of me. So we complement each other well. And I remember thinking, you know, if I do something, I would like to invite him on. And so that was a conversation we had while I was still working at that job, and I get fired. I'm having the worst day ever, right? I'm at home, maybe crying, maybe not, who knows? And I get a call, and it's Angel. And it just so happens that day he's calling me, and he's like, hey, Manushi, I know we talked about this thing. Are you still doing it? And you know what? At that point, I think I was like, fuck all of this. I'm going back to LA. I'm going to go, you know, stay with my family for a while. So just like really soaking in those moments where it's like, oh, maybe this is something, you know, maybe there's something meant to be here, right? And I don't know, there's just been moments like that where I'm like, I just want to walk away from everything. I think, Jenise, when I met you, I was there too.
You're on the cusp again.
Yes, I was like.
As every good entrepreneur should have, is questioning their decision. It's important.
Yeah, so I feel like, everyone I've met, like I've realized like had some kind of role in how I ended up here, right?
Yeah, but you just came back to Sacramento, right?
Yes.
So after the pandemic had happened, or when the pandemic happened, you made the decision to go back to LA?
Yeah, okay.
And
so
where was like Tuk in your mind at that point?
Let's see, I'm gonna go back to 2017, the call with Angel, and then I started doing research, right? And then I flew to Denver, where the manufacturer is, and this was October 2017.
Dang. You went all in, yeah.
All in, I was like, okay, I need to go see this, see how it is. And I worked with the company there, they were so gracious, right? And here again, like, you have to go and ask, like, can I come visit? Can I come see this, right? That was 2017. 2018, I'm like, okay, how do I now buy a tuk-tuk and get one here? And that's kind of when I started really looking into the entrepreneur world in Sacramento, which, gosh, I just love it. I love the community here. I think there's something special, and there's a lot of support here, That's one of the reasons I came back. But I feel like all of 2018, I was really kind of like banging my head against the wall. It was like, okay, this is not clicking. This is not clicking. What do I do? Who do I talk to?
What were some of the things that weren't clicking that kind of stand out to you?
I think just, meeting people, trying to find or build capital, trying to find investors. I did so many like pitches thinking like, okay, this is going to click and someone's going to bite. So there's a lot of like back end work I had to do, right? And then I'm going and going and nothing is really biting. And then in 2019, we connected with a company in Napa who was willing to do some kind of like a pop-up business because they had a tuk-tuk over there. Yeah, so they were willing to lease us a tuk-tuk and kind of do like a pop-up just to try out the market here.
Okay.
Yeah. So again,
so you had to get creative.
Yes, exactly. So this is like going back to thinking outside of the box. Is okay. So I can't do exactly what I want. So what would a piece of that look like, right? And then, am I willing to compromise? And what would that look like for me? And then how do I still keep sight of my bigger goal while doing this, right? So at that point, it is 2019. Let's see. So we do a little pop-up, and then we get an investor out of doing that and kind of proving that there is a market here for it, right? So I get the investor by doing just a random at your side hustle Wednesday.
It was actually physically here.
Yes, physically here. So and that was supposed to be a test, just a test presentation.
Pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think anyone would take interest, because it was just.
But you still showed up. Exactly,
and I think that's like one of the key things is that you just never know how it's gonna come back, So that happens so by January 2019, we've now like gotten an investor, more interest, and then December 2019 is when we get the investor. January 2020 is when we get the tuk-tuk here. Okay. I have a video of it just like pulling up on my driveway, and we're like, yeah, it's time to go, right?
And you purchased this with your own capital, right?
Purchased it, yeah. And I'm like, and I was working full time too, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna self-fund this, and it gets here, and then of course the pandemic hits, right?
That's crazy how I didn't realize how close it was to like physically getting your tuk-tuk, being on the cusp of like, this is going to be a great year, and then the pandemic.
I think we all thought like best year ever, 2020, right?
I can't believe we're in 2023 right now, you guys. Like,
yes.
It's very awkward.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we now?
2020, January 20.
Well, the world just shut down,
World
basically.
shuts down.
You had just gotten your tuk-tuk.
What does Manushi do?
So, it's like you have to ask yourself, like, what kind of principles is this company going to be, right? Do we care about revenue, over people's well-being? Because at that point, we were told to, not be in close contact with people. So I really had to think, do I push touring, around the city while, people are really having a hard time, right? And there's a real credible concern, right? Health concern. So I kind of had to make a decision that this is not the right time, and so I paused, I paused and kind of focused on other things like my well-being, my family's well-being, and I think it worked out that, even the investor that I'm working with, there wasn't any kind of like, hey, where's my money, and I think that goes back to like picking the right people to be on your side, because there was like an understanding that there's a belief in the company versus like what can it do for me kind of thing, right? So there was a huge, a hiatus on moving forward with actually trying to get out there. And then I ended up moving to LA because I thought, okay, I'm going to be home and there might be a market there, right? And I'm going to take a break and build there. And in that time, I think I had time to reflect on what I cared about, right? What was important to me and where did I see myself in the next coming years, right? Do I see myself building a community and networking and starting from scratch in LA, which by the way, like I could not get into this market, right? I could not build a community. And I don't know if it was, okay, do I just keep trying or kind of go with where the flow is going, right? And I remember I called Cook. Cooks? Yes. I called Cooks and I had a conversation with him and then we just kind of talked about what the city is looking like now. And I think I called you, Jenise.
I actually thought you weren't going to come back to Sacramento at all.
Really?
So when you came back, I was like, okay, she's here to fight. You're here to fight for your business, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I really did think about, how this became a thing, right? Like Tuk Tuk was born here, right? And the idea for it and the drive for it was built like around the community here as well. Like I really felt like it fit here, right? So for me to take it somewhere and try to like squeeze it into that environment, it just didn't seem right? And it actually didn't fit. So, not to say there might be a market in the future, but I don't think that was the place to start it. And while I'm talking to different people, the fire was kind of coming back, right? And it was like, okay, like I could see that there is a hunger still here, whether it's my business or any other business, right? I feel like Sacramento really, I don't know, it just has a thing about it where it invites and welcomes new businesses, people. I think anyone that wants to do something here is welcome to do it. At least try and fail,
Yeah, we support a little bit of scrappiness around here.
Yeah, exactly. And I really appreciate that, And then things just started clicking. Like I found a place to store it. I got the Tuk repaired. I found the transport company. I found a place to stay. Like even that was like, I had a friend kind of suggest that I, take up the room there. And then she's like, oh, actually someone took it. And then a month later, she's like, hey, are you still looking for an apartment? I'm like, yes.
And that's what brought you home.
Yeah.
To this home.
Exactly.
To this home, yes.
But it was like, accepting, okay, there's some kind of flow here versus me fighting against the current, right? And I think part of being an entrepreneur is recognizing when to fight the current and also when to go with the flow.
Very well said.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a lesson that you have to learn while doing it versus like someone telling you what is against the current and versus what's going with the current.
And in my case, I need to learn that repeatedly.
Same. Yeah. So, and that was, I think from September on, I've just been kicked in the butt with like everything kind of working out.
So it's a good homecoming.
Yes, and that is also hard to sit with, you know? Like it's hard sitting with things going bad, right? But I don't know for you guys, but for myself, I'm like, oh yeah, of course things would go wrong. Like that's what happens, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like expecting things to go wrong, and then when things are going well and it's all working out, I'm like, I'm comfortable. Like what's going on? Like
Right.
how are things just
Something's got to be wrong behind the scenes. Let me double check everything.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's another thing maybe I would leave behind here is that when it's going well, just accept it.
Or ride the wave.
Exactly.
Ride the wave.
Yeah, like expect good to happen just as easy as, you know, bad things happen, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that's more common than most people are willing to admit, of that like unwillingness to accept things being good.
Yeah.
One thing that we've been working on at GDM is definitely celebrating the wins, even the small ones, but also celebrating the losses too, and giving them both that equal space.
You did
And
talk
so-
about that as your new ritual.
Yeah. So we'll have a drink. We'll cheers for the bad times just as much as we will for the good. And I think it's a really good exercise to like center yourself and be happy with both, because both are going to happen regardless, right? So why give one more value than the other?
Yes, exactly.
So the first question was, so how are you doing, Manushi? I want to circle back to that. Can we?
Just kidding. Such a good question because like I'm not sure. I'm just like, what's happening? Like, you know, because things are going well, but then there's so much work. There is so much work, you know, and I think, you know, if anyone were to say, oh yeah, like things will just work out and things start working out and it becomes easier, like I don't know what they're doing right, but I want to know. Because it's basically like figuring everything out as I'm going along, and when you're operating, it's so much more than when you're business planning, right? Because when you're developing the business, you're kind of making projections, you're trying to plan for what could go wrong, and then you don't realize, okay, there's like 10 more things that you didn't think about, right?
It's okay. That's part of the process.
Exactly. So it's been a lot of work. I think the other part is like, you might get to I'm coming to a place where I'm like, okay, I have to ask myself every day, is this what I really want? Is this what I really want, right? And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but so far I've said yes each time. And, you know, I think it's okay, you know, to continuously question and reflect. And, you know, maybe the day that I'm like, I'm not sure is when I can think about, well, why, you know? But yeah, I think so far so good. It's definitely like, there's been a lot of challenges, you know, with the weather changing, seasons changing. Obviously, like we couldn't plan for cyclones happening, like, you know, all these factors that we can't really predict, right? But being okay with all the different things that come at us and going with the flow yet again, right? Yeah.
So there's a decision you made today. Are we celebrating a win, or are you calling this a loss? Do you want to talk about the decision you made today?
Yeah, sure. I don't think it's a loss.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what this means.
Do you want to say what it is?
Sure, yeah. So I just put in my 2-week notice for my 9 to 5.
Wait, honestly, every time someone says that, we always cheer like, yes, let's go.
Which, you know, again, I'm not sure if that means that I'll be working tuk-tuk full time. And again, those are conversations I'm having with myself about what that would look like, right? I'm imagining it, and I like how that feels, right? Imagining doing this full time, fully committing all of my energy to building the business, you know?
Was the business the decision of why you put your 2 weeks in? Or was it just another opportunity or a catalyst for you to focus on your business?
Yeah, I think the latter. Yeah, I think it's just, I don't know if it was like, okay, I'm going to consciously decide this. It's just, again, it feels like a flow, you know, because I've been working remotely for the job in LA. And, you know, they've been so gracious to let me do that. And I realized, okay, this is not quite working for me, right? So I made a decision there, and I don't know what the next right decision is, but I just know it feels right. Yeah.
Interesting. Is there something you do to cultivate that flow? Is there a way that you can give the speaker, turn up the volume on that inner voice a little bit? Because you've said that a few times now, and I'm fascinated by it, because it's we throw that word around really loosely, and it means a lot of things to a lot of people, but I'd love to hear what you do to create that for yourself.
Ooh, it's a good question. Also loaded, because it's like you're going to open a whole other box of like spirituality and manifestation and all that stuff. So there, you know, obviously there's some very like personal things that I do for myself. Maybe not relevant to the business world, but I think it is 100%.
I think so too.
Okay.
I make peace with a lot of varying opinions, and I have my own spiritually grounded practices as well. We don't need to turn it into a full like meditative session or make it feel culty or anything. We'll save it for my personal podcast. Yeah. Cults with Cope. That'll be the next one we do. But like if you
with Cope, that's
there we go.
That's what I need, honestly.
There we go.
We need some tools here.
yeah. So I guess that would be what I would ask for then. Like, what's like one tool that you think, even if it's not necessarily like practical from what we would call traditional business sense, what would that one thing be that someone might try to implement to create more flow for themselves?
Ooh, okay, I think I like to just kind of pause and look around my space. If I have to clean my room, first of all. I have like some self-diagnosed ADHD, so when I see like, Jenise, you're like, yes. So when I see my space, I see my space as a reflection of my internal world, right? So I will buy a candle and, you know, clean up my closet and really clean my space up so that I can feel clear and clarity.
That's
right?
beautiful. Yeah.
So that would be a big step that I do. I would love to say that I meditate daily and journal and whatnot.
But say it as it is.
Yeah.
That's definitely that's a version I want to be, you know. But I think it goes back to like being true to myself and who I am, right? Like I'm not going to be the 4 a.m. club, you know. Like I
still feel like I will get there one day.
Yeah.
It's goals, but not really.
Yeah,
not
I
really.
think I've accepted that's not going to be me. I'm in the 2 a.m. club, like stay up till 2 a.m. and get what I need to get done. So it's just going back to your authentic self, right? And figuring out what works for you. So if making sure that I'm going to the gym regularly, cleaning up my space, like I said, managing my stress levels. I think when we're stressed out, decision making can be very impulsive. So I try to, take a breath, realize, okay, I'm really stressed out. What do I need to do to calm my stress? And then let's make decisions based off of a more like relaxed space.
Very well said.
Yeah,
Very
and
well.
I know that's like a privilege, to get to that space.
But I think you can create that in the micro, because nothing you said is like super crazy or out of control. Like, how could someone implement this? Like, there's something simple to making your bed, picking things up, creating that clarity, like you said. And I think more people should try to work on some of that, because I think that's been very huge for me personally, is making sure like, okay, if my car is in disarray, then I know I've been going far too fast. And right now there's a couple things in my car that I'm reminded, go back, create that clarity of having that space. That really just improves everything.
Yeah.
So you know yourself really well, which
you can tell.
You can tell. You kind of exude it just very naturally. I would be interested to know, how does Manushi define what hustle is?
Or a hustler,
Or what a hustler is. Yes, thank you.
It's such a, I'm like getting all like, I don't know, in my head, but I feel like for me, entrepreneurship has just been an exercise in vulnerability. And this is my personal experience. I don't know how it is for other people. I know it seems like on Instagram and stuff, like it's like you're in this beast mode, right? And for me, it has not been a beast mode. It's been like I'm in like a tumble dryer, you know, like
tumble dryer trying to find peace mode.
Yes, tossed and turned. I think for me, it's been acknowledging I need help with this, that I struggle to ask for help, and then being okay with saying, hey, this is the areas I need support with. Can you help me with that?
Yeah.
And also receiving some answers that I might not like or that might not feel good, you know, and sitting with that and moving forward from that, you know, picking myself back up again. I think it takes a lot of grit and resilience to be an entrepreneur in any kind of setting, no matter how small, you know. So I would say that's one thing. And then for me, again, going back to what's true to me, I think being authentic with my own experience, right? Like I said, I'm not going to be that 4 a.m. club, you know, realizing like my goals are individual to me,
right, and
what other people see for me or see for the company, right? Is not always going to align with what I need as a business owner and what I need as in the business, but also what I need as an individual, you know? So trying not to get caught up in that noise, again, like I said, and being okay with asking for help, being vulnerable, acknowledging that sometimes people aren't going to like you for the things you're saying or things you're asking or the boundaries you're setting. Like I've had to say no to so many different things, whether it's like, I don't know, the holidays or, you know, going out or it has been a lifestyle change for sure, you know.
I'm not mad about a vulnerable hustler who protects her boundaries.
Yeah, that's been my experience, you know. So it's really humbling, I think. Honestly, like this whole journey has just been so humbling, and I think it's great, you know. I think I'll just speak for myself, like, you know, when this becomes a thing, you know. I do want to, you know, still feel my authentic self, you know. I still do want to remain humble and remember the process and the journey that it took to get to these places. And I think that's what's been interesting about celebrating the wins, is that I know how much work it took to get to that point. So it just keeps me grounded in the reality of it, you know.
Love that.
Yeah.
Is there any last message you would say on this podcast to the world about being a hustler? Or what's the one message you would say?
I thought about this, and I don't know if this is like the last message or whatever, but I can say, you know, there's all these like sayings and quotes about like how to do this and that, right? And I know I just said, you know, be your authentic self. So listen, there's a part of it though that you might have to not be yourself at times, and you have to like create versions of yourself that will step up to the occasion, you know? Yes. So I've had many of those moments too. I mean, sitting here with you guys, for example. I mean, we talked about, when you invited me to the podcast, I was like, I'm not like a speaker, you know?
I mean, you've been doing great. And more than being a speaker, I feel like this is a time capsule for where you are right now.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again in a year and talk about this and see how you define yourself.
Honestly, and I'm like dreading it because I'm like, shoot, I know I'm going to go back and watch and I'm going to nitpick and I'm like, I can't believe I said that. But again, like, you just got to do it, you know, you just got to do it. And there's, like I said, there's been times where you just have to kind of step up and create these versions of yourself that will do the things that you kind of don't want to do, or that might not feel as authentic to who you think you are, right?
Right there. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Who you think you are.
Absolutely.
Right. Or who other people have told you are, right?
That one's a harder one to wrestle with,
Yes.
personally.
Yeah. I know. Jeez, we can take another hour running through that. But is there anything else that you wanted to close out, shout out, anything that we should be on the lookout for?
Oh man, I just want thank you guys for inviting me to this.
Yes, we'll take it.
Yeah, and thank you. I think what you guys bring as friends and just as hustlers. It's just been, like again lighting that fire, and keeping me grounded and like a little reminder of why I'm doing any of this. So I definitely consider you guys part of the community, and one of the reasons I'm able to show up, right? But as far as Capital Tuk Tuk goes, I would say stay tuned. There's going to be I would say there will be a pickup, once the weather gets better, and we're hoping to kind of like really launch up in the springtime. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Awesome. Can I help you do a quick shout out for yourself really quickly?
Yes, sure.
Where can we follow you?
You can follow us on Instagram. It's capital_tuk tuk. And then I think we're on TikTok at Capital Tuk Tuk, and then capitaltuktuk.com, of course.
And Tuk Tuk is TUK.
Yes.
There we go. Awesome. Thank you so much. We had a wonderful time talking to you. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing with us.
You did it, yeah.
You did it. Awesome. Well done. And we're done. We're round.